Today, we're digging into the really powerful story of Elina Pradhan. It's a journey that takes us from a quiet life in Darjeeling through an absolutely devastating crisis and all the way to a new beginning in Israel. So let's start with the world she came from.
This one sentence, well, it was basically the foundation of Elina's entire early life. She says she was a really quiet person. You know, the type who wouldn't say two words if one would do. She was raised in a devout Hindu family, and her arranged marriage was built on this very principle. She would literally wake up and wash her husband's feet, treating him, just as tradition demanded, like a god.
But this world, which seemed so stable and traditional, was about to be completely, totally fractured by a series of betrayals that pushed her right to the absolute edge.
And the way it all unraveled was just brutal. Pretty soon after they were married, her husband started having an affair. The despair she felt was so deep, so profound, that Elina actually tried to take her own life with poison. She survived that, but years later, the betrayal hit a level that's, well, it's almost hard to believe. He brought another woman into their home and just introduced her as his sister.
Now, even with all this painful history, a visit in 2005 seemed different. He'd been away for a while, but he came to see her and their young son. And when it was time for him to leave for the train station, the goodbye was really emotional. They both just wept as he left.
So this is where things get really interesting. He was supposedly on a train. She was back at home. How in the world, with no cell phones to track or text messages to find, did she figure out the truth just a few hours after that tearful farewell? What happened next wasn't driven by any kind of logic or proof. It was all about a sudden, powerful, and frankly, inexplicable feeling that something was very, very wrong.
Before he left, they stopped at an ATM. She asked him for the receipt. It was just something she always did, and he claimed he'd forgotten to get it. On the bus ride home, that tiny little detail started to gnaw at her. A thought just got stuck in her head. Why would he hide the receipt? And then bam, an inner voice, a gut feeling, told her with absolute certainty that he was not on a train. He was with her.
And then something pretty remarkable happened. A memory from 3 years before just came flooding back with perfect clarity. When her husband first introduced that woman as his sister, the woman had told her all about her family and her home village. Now, all these years later, Elina remembered the exact address, the names of her relatives, everything.
She rushed home and told her father and her uncles what she suspected. And they were completely skeptical. Her dad was even joking that she was going crazy, that they'd all just seen her husband off. But Elina was so insistent, so sure, that she somehow convinced them to pile into a car and drive into the night to find him.
And you just have to picture the shock of this moment. After this long, dark drive up winding roads, they find the house. Elina creeps up to a window, pulls back the curtain, and there he is. The same man she had been crying with just hours before was sitting there, comfortable, in another woman's home. And, as you can imagine, that discovery led to a huge, chaotic, emotional confrontation between the two families right then and there.
But the real turning point in her story, the part that changed everything, didn't actually happen in the middle of that chaotic fight. It came later, after she'd returned home, feeling completely and utterly defeated.
Back in her room, all alone at 2 in the morning, she hit rock bottom. And in that moment of total despair, she heard a clear voice speak to her in her native Nepali. It said the words you see right here, "I am with you." She says it wasn't a thought in her head, it was like an audible voice, and it brought her this incredible sense of comfort.
This single, mysterious moment, well, it sparked a quiet, solitary, and very secret search for a kind of truth that she felt like she'd never known before.
What's so fascinating is that even before all this crisis stuff happened, Elina had felt this deep disconnect from her family's religion. They were really devout, very involved in temple rituals and idol worship, but she always had this persistent feeling inside that these man-made statues, they couldn't be the real thing. She just believed the true God had to be one and unseen.
So this kicked off a spiritual journey that she went on completely by herself. She started fasting every Friday. She secretly asked someone to buy her a Bible and started reading it in private with no one to guide her. Really, her only exposure to it before was years earlier when she'd found a New Testament in some old box and just read it to pass the time.
So with her husband no longer supporting her, Elina knew she had to provide for her son, and she made a really bold decision. She was going to find work abroad, and she set her sights on Israel.
But her path there was anything but easy. Her first visa application was rejected,
Her father was urging her to just give up and come home, but she refused. For 6 long months, she waited in Mumbai, just holding on to hope. And finally, her persistence paid off. In 2009, she arrived in Israel.
And almost immediately after landing in this new country, she found what she'd been searching for. It was just 1 week after she arrived that she connected with the United Nepali Church. And this whole journey, which really began with a quiet feeling inside her, it culminated in her being baptized in the historic Jordan River. This decision, though, it created a huge rift with her family back home. Her father was furious. He just couldn't understand her choice. He actually told her that if she ever came back, he would personally drag her to the river and perform a ritual to make her a Hindu again.
So, after this incredible, chaotic journey, from a quiet wife in Darjeeling to a new life in the Middle East, what does Elina's life actually look like today?
Her life has been completely transformed. She's found this new community and a new purpose, even becoming a leader in her church's choir. And remarkably, she says she has fully forgiven her ex-husband and his wife. She even speaks with them for their son's sake. She talks about a life that's filled with a peace and a joy she never knew was possible. And in this really beautiful full-circle moment, her son, who's now 25, recently chose the same path and was also baptized. For over 16 years now, Elina has been building this new life. A life that's not founded on a tradition she was just born into, but on a faith she had to actively and secretly search out for herself.
In the end, Elina's story doesn't really leave us with a simple answer. Instead, she leaves us with the exact question that pushed her on her entire journey. In a world with so many different truths, she asks, which one is the one that truly leads to an eternal destination? It's the question that took her from the depths of despair to a brand new dawn.